All right, welcome to Naija Unfiltered, a SYMFONI podcast. And our guest on today's edition of the program is a member of the Nigeria Democratic Congress, public affairs analyst, and of course, he is a medical doctor, if you like, a public health policy and management specialist, Dr. Laz Eze. Doc, good to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
All right, let's start with 3 years of Tinubu's administration. We've gone 3 years. Some persons are saying it is the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's hear from you, your assessment, especially in the areas of security, economy, and general governance.
Well, 3 years of President Tinubu administration is one that a lot of Nigerians wish it didn't happen, in the sense that the various development indices, Nigerians feel less secure today than they were in 2023. And it wasn't as if they felt secure in 2023. In fact, from, say, the past 10, 11, 12 years, the trajectory has been downwards, especially since the All Progressive Congress, who Nigerians, including me, were quite optimistic and enthusiastic that, we weren't too satisfied with the Jonathan's administration. So we thought, a lot of Nigerians, that the change message that the party preached, and given the collection of persons, some governors, so many persons that would work and improve on where the PDP administration didn't do quite well. But unfortunately, it didn't take long before Nigerians realized that they made a very costly mistake by electing the All Progressive Congress administration. And the late President Buhari had 8 years that the country suffered 2 recessions within the first 2 years of his administration. Insecurity, the public bombings reduced in Abuja and some locations, but it's kind of translated into something else, where we started hearing about bandits, we started hearing having upsurge in criminal kidnapping for ransom, killings, senseless killings, and also witness, worsening security situation in the southeast, which has kind of slowed, but not completely eliminated. And Tinubu coming in, people felt perhaps he's got a bit more experience in terms of his own job experience, his experience as governor, and also experience in managing the diversity in Lagos where he governed. But unfortunately, the trajectory of the country had even gone further than from day one. He made one pronouncement that brought the economy down from what worse than what it was at the time of taking over. Just the announcement of subsidy gone without any measure to cushion the potential effect, which everyone had known about. Floating the naira and also a number of other decisions made by the administration. We are yet to recover from it. And with that economy not doing well, we now have unemployment remains high despite the rebasing or the change of formula that they were using to do the calculation to make it look better. But Nigerians are less employed now, especially young people. Youth unemployment rate was over 40%, and still businesses are shutting down. Energy crisis, the power sector, the national grid appears to be having some form of epilepsy, shutting down periodically to the point that Aso Villa lost faith or trust in the public power supply and reportedly switched to solar system, which many Nigerians can't afford to build for themselves. Or do we talk about out-of-school children? It hasn't got better. Do we talk about a number of Nigerians living in multi-dimensional poverty from 133 million, according to the National Multi-Dimensional Poverty Index by NBS, National Bureau of Statistics in 2022, to the projection by PwC early in 2026 that it has increased to, or potentially increased to 141 million Nigerians. Security, we are not doing fine. School abductions has continued from the Chibok incident in 2014 to so many other cases across the country. And under this president, media report shows that more persons have been abducted in the past 3 years than were those who were abducted under 8 years of late President Buhari administration, or even the 5 years of Goodluck administration. So any side you look at is not inspiring. Nigerians are less hopeful today, despite the renewed hope mantra of the administration. But Nigerians are less hopeful today than they were ever in our recent history.
But the government argues that they've done so much in terms of economic reforms, and they are asking us to be a little patient before we start reaping the dividends of the economic reforms. Don't you see the reforms?
Well, I see what is time to be reforms, but what I see is not in anything on the positive trajectory, as it has to do with majority of Nigerians. Yes, they might say, I think the Q1 2026, the GDP is around 3 point something, compared to perhaps around 2 points 3 years ago. But when they mention those indices, GDP, GDP doesn't reflect the inequalities in the system. If I used to make 10 billion and I started making 100 billion, or maybe there are few of us, 0.01% of the population, who are getting richer, it will reflect in the GDP. But it hasn't quite reflected or covered perhaps Nigerians who used to feed 3 times a day and now feeding once a day. We've borrowed more, if that is reform, in the past 2 years or in the past 3 years than ever in the history of this country. Between 1960 of independence to 2015, at the end, when APC administration was taking over, our total debt was around 12 trillion naira. When President Buhari was leaving in 2023, it was around 87 trillion naira. Now it's around 159 points. I think around that 155 or around 159 trillion naira. And just the past 24 months of this administration, they've borrowed over 60 trillion, which is more than 5 times of what the country was owing over a 55-year period. So if this is what reform is about, that's not the kind of reform this country needs. Because your borrowing is not reflecting, if these monies were borrowed and we are seeing investment in the power sector, we have more energy available for industries, for small businesses. The barber doesn't have to be buying I better pass my neighbor, which used to be 15,000 naira and now more than 100,000 naira, trying to fuel the fuel that was 190 something naira in 2023 at the point of taking over is now over 1,300 naira and up to 1,005 in some parts of the country. So we've been hearing, Nigerians have been hearing about bear with us, these reforms we pay, be patient. We heard it when Buhari came in and it got worse, and we kept hearing it, in the life of the APC administration across 2 different presidents. For how long will Nigeria continue to suffer and be impatient when the leadership class, continue to live large? So if this sacrifice is made, why is it only the average and poor Nigerians that keep making these sacrifices? And in the midst of that, the administration is, buying additional private jets, National Assembly members, they are buying new cars for them. They are not even patronizing the locally made or locally assembled cars to at least push that money into the Nigerian economy for it to flow and more people have access to it. They are procuring cars built in other countries. So I don't see any positive relevance of the so-called economic reforms. It's not reflecting in the average life of the Nigerian people.
How do you reconcile the fact that some states, they are hotbed of insecurity, are still shouting, Tinubu continue, Tinubu continue? Is it that we are being given political figures in terms of people being killed? Because rationally thinking, you ask yourself, how can my state be under siege and I will still be talking about voting for that same party that has superintended over the subjugation of my state? How do you reconcile that?
I think that's a sense of Stockholm Syndrome. A situation where someone who is being oppressed, is a psychological situation. It gets to a point that they fall in love with the oppressor and even begin to make excuses for the oppressor. Nigerians have suffered so much. States, people have been so traumatized in different ways, up to a point that, many of them are now suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. They are making excuses for the oppressors. They are making excuses for the leadership that has failed them, and even begin to see, maybe we are the ones at fault, and also poverty is being weaponized. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first level is food, shelter, clothing. People just want to eat. They want to have shelter. They want to survive. When they're operating at that level, they are not seeing the future. If you are saying this person could do this, that will make us feel better in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, they are not seeing that. What they are seeing is there something in my hands? Is there food on my table to eat now? And that's essentially what I think the government is doing, just taking advantage of the extreme multi-dimensional poverty that people are going through, making them more vulnerable and manipulate them with a false premise as if things will get better, dividing Nigerians along different fault lines. Instead of people facing the issues that affect all of us, they would rather be looking at the God that someone worships, the language the person speaks, and how the person looks. And these are mundane things when all of us, everybody in this geographical area called Nigeria, face similar risk and challenges. And for those who feel they are safe today, perhaps they are occupying public office and using our common resource to subsidize their lifestyle, feel a bit better. When they leave office, they still find themselves exposed to similar risks. Nobody is really safe in the current situation. While we might tend to blame Nigerians for those who may appear to be supporting, but look at it, it's even changing because a lot of people are getting wiser. People are now saying rice is no longer enough to buy their vote. People are, voicing out that we need to rescue this country. People are voicing out that we need a competent leadership, a leadership that is committed to getting this country work, to uniting Nigeria and harnessing the youth demography, not using them as touts and not using them to insult others, manipulating them to create more division in the country, but investing in young people in a sustainable manner where the energy will be used to rebuild this country, where the son of nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody.
Let's look at your party. You're a member of the Nigerian Democratic Congress. And since after the primaries that was well lauded by many people and produced your presidential candidates in Peter Obi, there have been stories about turbulence, internal turbulence, fraction within the party resulting from the primaries. What exactly is happening, or is your NDC facing a likely implosion?
Far from it, NDC is definitely not facing implosion. People need to put things in context. NDC was formally registered in February 2026. This is June 2026, just barely 4 months old. And the party was still mobilizing Nigeria. It started its registration, I think, around March, to register people to join the party, setting up structures, had its convention, world congresses, LGA congresses, and state-level congresses in May. So this is like a baby. as a political party that is still crawling, yet even to stand to walk, but due to certain dynamics in the system, His Excellency Peter Obi and His Excellency Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, moved from the ADC. I was also in the ADC, part of the coalition. I'm an ardent supporter of Mr. Peter Obi, and we moved to that party in our numbers, and due to the Electoral Act that apparently has been designed in such a way to make life very difficult for opposition parties, with the strict timelines that INEC released, making all the primary processes to happen in the month of May, even when we still have like 4 months up to September before campaigns could start. It kind of made everything happening so fast. So you have people Nigerians moving from the ADC and from other parties, because obedience are, from different parties, into the NDC, because they believe that Mr. Peter Obi must be on the ballot, as against what the establishment is planning to ensure that he's never on the ballot in 2027 elections. Moved into NDC, people barely knew themselves. People barely knew who the other members of the party were. Mr. Peter Obi joined the party officially, I think, on 4th of May. And the state congresses of NDC were holding on 5th when they were electing state chairmen. And in less than a week, National Convention held. So given all these dynamics, immediately after National Convention, next was the primaries processes. People going to the field to do primaries, you are even, who is the ward chairman? It took a while before I even knew who my ward chairman was, So because these people were new and they were overwhelmed, by the number of persons who came in. I must commend the NDC, because it takes a lot. I've been a state chairman of the Alliance for New Nigeria that was registered in 2020. I was national vice chairman, Southeast. So I have some reasonable experience in political party administration. So I can only imagine, that force with people coming with ambitions, different expectations, and they've not formed this relationship to kind of know each other, and at that point of looking for tickets, I want to be a candidate. You have 5, 6, 7 persons looking for one ticket, everybody playing their card. It's extremely difficult to manage. And with the new Electoral Act, new political party, the party trying to navigate, not making mistakes, not doing things that could invalidate the processes, there's no way in this kind of situation where there won't be gaps here and there. And some persons, either within or outside the party, may also want to take advantage of this kind of situation to exploit certain things. So people tend to be harsh towards NDC, but it's not a fair comparison. Look at the APC, that's been there, party in power, is not finding it easy either, despite the fact that they've done their membership registration, had their membership register, now went and altered the Electoral Act that was carried out in the National Assembly, with the messy way that they went into inserting certain clauses that are not progressive, that has only taken us backwards and not forward, all with the aim of achieving a one-party state and getting His Excellency Mr. Peter Obi, who most Nigerians are enthusiastic to vote for in 2027, ensuring that he's not on the ballot. So those are the things that kind of created the atmosphere. But I must commend the leadership of NDC, the way they've been managing the situation. The national leader, Seriake Dixon, is quite experienced, having been a rep, senator, and also a governor. And the national chairman was also a senator. So they brought their experience, Mr. Peter Obi and His Excellency Kwankwaso. They also had meetings, tried to navigate the whole situation in such a way that the party will not implode. It's not every political party that will be able to manage the kind of situation NDC found itself. But so far, so good.
All right, there are allegations that the national leader of the party is showing signs of dictatorial tendencies by not allowing the party structures to function effectively and, of course, also determining who gets what. How do you respond to this?
I've not seen the evidence to confirm or to validate such an allegation.
All right, INEC said you have only 700,000 registered members. So who are the people you're expecting to vote for you at 2027 elections?
Which INEC release said that?
INEC, of course, when they were giving numbers of registration of political parties, talked about just around
in the month of May,
having their primaries, yes, that APC had 12 point something million, PDP 1.3, Labour 1.2, and then ADC, and then NDC 700,000. So
the people that vote in elections don't need to carry, it's not political party membership that they used to vote, it's the PVC. And I can bet the way the APC did their own registration, some of us are aware the way they did it. Because they are government in power, they have access to people's data. Some people are members in the APC register without even knowing that they are members of the party. Because you just need someone's NIN to get the person registered online in a political party. So when they go under the guise of empowering people and social programs, collect people's data, they use it, and get them registered in the party without those ones even knowing that they're registered members of the party. But if, according to what you said, that number of registered members in NDC is over 700,000, I think it's a good number for a party that is barely 4 months old. And the registration continues. More Nigerians will continue to join the party, those who wish to be members of political parties. Some don't wish to be members of political party, but they are going to vote, and even members of the APC, many of them are not happy. They might not come on TV to say it, they might not go on social media to say it, but many of them don't think that this administration should continue. And I have a good number of them that express those opinions.
Let's look at the number of people in the opposition camp that are likely to go up against President Tinubu. Talk about Obi, talk about Atiku, you talk about Donald Duke, you talk about Prince Adewale Adebayo, and then you also talk about Showore. Ironically, all of them from the south. Is it not a good news for President Tinubu that the opposition has fragmented themselves? So he can probably still hold on to his stronghold and coast to victory, or even, alternatively, swing in the direction of Atiku Abubakar, since he's from the north and the only northerner in the race.
We often tend to reduce these the elections about geopolitics or geographical identities, but it's not entirely about that. Perhaps in the past years it could play a huge role, but I think that line is blurring. You can't completely take it out because political actors want to harness that when they cannot speak to issues, when the incumbent know that it's not achieved well enough to convince Nigerians to be re-elected, when Mr. President said, by every means necessary, I must give you power. And if I don't give you, if I come back for re-election, please don't vote for me. And after making such statements, the president in his office has even left the national grid. So they are left with nothing, to really campaign about. So they now try to push it to where someone comes from. If it's about where the candidates come from, the last election was also similar. Why didn't His Excellency Atiku Abubakar win the election? Even though he was the major candidate from the north and the others were from the south. But if you pull the votes that were declared for President Tinubu and Mr. Peter Obi, put together, even their votes in the north is more than His Excellency Atiku's votes in the same north. So it's not really about where they come from. The over 6 million votes Mr. Peter Obi got, were substantially from both north and south. He won states in the north, he won states in the south. And people could see that the issues in this election, yes, there's the convention that we do 8 years south, do 8 years north, which in my view, I didn't think His Excellency Atiku Abubakar should be in this race in the first place. But it's within his rights to continue to contest for over 30 years that he's been contesting. But Nigerians have the power to look at the candidates. Is it the incumbent that spent 3 years getting to 4 years that have not demonstrated the capacity to move this country forward? Is it the former vice president, who many feel like should not even be in the race in the first place because he was a major campaigner for zoning? He left the PDP and went to join to form the APC because he believed it was the turn of the North, So, but even when it's supposed to be the turn of the South, he has continued to contest, trying to, get the Northern voters to be like, oh, I'm one of you, you must vote for me. But Nigerians have gone beyond that. They want a president. I think Mr. Peter Obi is still the best and most likely going to win the election by 2027 because nobody is buying bread cheaper. The insecurity is affecting everybody. We have the kidnapped children in Oyo State recently, which is southwest Nigeria where the president comes from. He didn't say, oh, because the president comes from here, they are safer. When President Buhari was in office, we had abductions in Katsina. So they just use this as placebo and to make people feel this emotional stuff of because of where you come from. Obi is not primarily running for the presidency because of where he comes from. He's running because he has what it takes and he has demonstrated it in Anambra State, where education indices tremendously improved, where health indices improved, where human development index became better, where infrastructure were tackled, millennium development goals indices is scored very high, security situation under his watch was top-notch and was, applauded for various development indices. And that's why a lot of Nigerians, especially young Nigerians, who constitute more than 70% of the population of this country, who are the ones that will suffer for the misgovernance, because that generation will live longer than the older generation, to bear the consequences of the current situation, who each person is owing 607,000 naira based on our current debt profile of 159 trillion naira. Every young Nigerian, including those who are in school, including those who are older, every Nigerian is owing 607,000. I have not seen where that money went to. So all these people are tending towards electing Mr. Peter Obi, just like they did in 2023. The working class Nigerians voted massively. If you look at the demographics, all the locations we have working class, they voted because this message of moving Nigeria from consumption to production resonated among the working. Even those who didn't support him then are also, beginning to see light that, yes, this man has been very consistent. Play his video of 2008, play his video of 2012, play his video of 2025 or 2026. He's been very consistent in his message, in his values, and also the achievements he speaks to in his personal life, where he goes to schools, supports health education, provides support to nursing schools, make donations to health facilities, make donations to schools, help in solving problems, show compassion, visit IDPs. He's been doing that until state governors started to stop him, from even visiting. People don't really realize how much the system has frustrated Mr. Peter Obi, if not for his courage, if not for his resilience in pushing for the good of this country. He probably would have capitulated or even given up in the pursuit for a new Nigeria. But he has not given up, and those of us who see that he is in the best position to, redirect the country to the point where we move from the downward slope to begin to come up to the level where we can move up, we continue to support him and we continue to mobilize to get him elected in 2027.
Let's have your personal assessment of the presidential candidates and their chances in this 2027 election. Is there still a chance for the opposition to defeat President Tinubu?
Yes.
Then let's have your assessment of the presidential candidates. How do you rate them?
Well, starting from the incumbent, the results are there, and he obviously doesn't have the numbers. Even the one he was declared was barely 1/3 of the total number of people who voted. A third, just barely above 30% of the votes cast that was used to, which many people even believed that those numbers were not real. So the question is whether he's got more people to his side. People may argue that yes, more governors had defected with their structures, whether they defected willingly or whether they were coerced or whether they were manipulated, whichever way. But the Nigerian people, how many have shifted their support to the opposition or to the government of the day? Not many that you could talk about. So what was done is they've used systematic political, push some persons, some very vocal persons, who switched allegiance for whatever benefit they could stand to gain, either for appointment or for other pecuniary gains. But the Nigerian people are determined to see the end of this administration by using the power of the ballot, the electoral system, to elect a new leadership. Then coming to the opposition, the preference of Nigerians was also for the opposition to come together, and the opposition went into the ADC, Mr. Peter Obi, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar, Chibika Amechi, and a whole lot of them had to come together, into the ADC. But it wasn't quite managed well, and our leader, Mr. Peter Obi, had to move with His Excellency Kwankwaso and His Excellency Peter Obi, moved into the NDC to provide viable alternative. And looking at both candidates, they share a number of things in common. They were both governors in Anambra and Kano states. They invested heavily in education. Kwankwaso built additional educational institutions, sent a lot of Kano people on scholarship. Even through his Kwankwasia Foundation, he's still sending people because they identified the relevance of education. Peter Obi invested heavily in basic education, handed over schools back to the missionaries, and supported them with necessary tools, gave them computers, enhanced the learning environment. And the results are showing today. There's hardly any academic competition in Nigeria, or that you will not find people from schools in Anambra State that are coming tops, or whether it's external examinations, whether it's JAMB, NECO, the result of that investment. And prior to Obi becoming governor, public schools were shut down due to strike in Anambra State for more than a year, and the results of those investments showed better. Human Development Index improved in both states when these guys were governors. And with that shared value, politically, no political actor in recent history of Nigeria has commanded more followership than in the Peter Obi, without having to buy people, without having to give money for logistics, but by just people connecting to his ideology, trusting his personality. Likewise, His Excellency Kwankwaso, who has the Kwankwasia movement, especially in the northwest part of Nigeria, and his scholarship is not only focused in the north. We also have people across the 36 states of the Federation who benefit from those scholarships. So we look at 2027, and what do the Nigerian people want? Who can they trust to be able to rescue the nation from the direction it's going that is not doing well improving the welfare and security of the people, which is the primary purpose of government. You could see, even if you want to do the Joe analysis, Obi will win substantially in the southeast and south-south, and will still win, get a whole lot of votes in the southwest, because even in the previous election, he got massive support in the southwest. He defeated the incumbent in his own state. Nobody would have given him that chance prior to the election, but he did it. Not because he paid people, not because he was a Yoruba man, but because he's an enlightened population that connected to his message. Even though the current administration had done some kind of social engineering to pitch, the ethnic groups against themselves for their own selfish gains, but it's not everybody that is falling to that gimmick, because people understand that President Tinubu is not, making life better even for Yoruba people. The hardship in the country is affecting them as well. And when you have a leader that have demonstrated competence, they're also going to benefit from it. So you may have those who might be swayed by some of those fault lines that, they are trying to divide people. But I don't see that playing out substantially in the next election. The biggest challenge I even see is in INEC. The last election, through the glitch, the so-called glitch, was how INEC sabotaged itself. And the signs are already there that INEC, under the current leadership, will not give Nigerians credible election. But Nigerians are determined to fight for their future. Nigerians are determined to force the various institutions to do the right thing, because it has become existential, in the life of this country to get things to work. We cannot continue to receive insults from everywhere. If you watch, you see in South Africa, they are asking Nigerians to go. Even our neighbors in Ghana are getting overwhelmed by the number of Nigerian people who are running to that place, and some of them are saying that, our people should leave their country. So it's just, we do not deserve that. Nigeria has some of the smartest people on earth, and have our people in WTO, United Nations, Deputy Secretary General, African Continental by immediate past president, our people shining everywhere. And Mr. P2B represents that person that will bring the best of Nigerians from across board, across different ethnicities, across different geographical locations, within and outside the country, within 4 years that he has promised, in order to respect the unwritten convention of this country of having power move from north to south every 8 years, to reset this country to get back to the point of path of progress.
Now that you talked about this issue of zoning, the NDC zoned the presidency to the south for just one term. Assuming P2B wins, how fair will it be for him to leave after 4 years to him and the people of the southeast? And secondly, is it a written agreement or a verbal agreement?
I use the language convention. At least since 1999, there's been the convention. And even at a point where there was an attempt to breach it, we saw what happened in 2015. President Jonathan would probably not have lost the second tenure if the convention of the South doing 8 years and not. Yaradua came, unfortunately, he lost his life and couldn't have the opportunity to go for second tenure. So it's assumed 2007 to 2011 was for the North. Jonathan completed 2011 to 2015, even though he also did 1 year, 2010 to 2011, out of Yaradua's tenure. So there was that strong emotions that you should go back to the North. And his argument was, we've been doing well, you don't change a winning team, and it was put to test. And majority of Nigerians went in the direction of going back to the North. It may not have been the only reason, but it contributed substantially to it. So in politics, there are constitutional issues, there are legal issues, but there's also convention. Everything is not based on black and white. Having said that, Obi is coming because of what he knows, because of what he has to offer, because of what he thinks that he'll be able to reset the country to the path of progress, to the path of sustainable development, to the path of people working and getting value for their efforts, to the path of Nigeria, being more productive, to the path of unity, where we begin to see ourselves as people and not begin to see ourselves from the different lens of the God somebody worships, the language he speaks, or the geographical area the person stays. So talking about fairness, Obi had always said, I'm not running because Southeast should have it. I'm not running out of the tribal sentiment. I'm running because I have the capacity, the competence, the character, the credibility, the compassion, and the commitment to save this country and reset it on a path of progress. And looking at it from that, you do not need 100 years for him to be able to do that. During his acceptance speech, he made certain commitments on power. He said within 4 years, he will be able to take power at least to 10 megawatts of electricity, 10,000 megawatts of electricity. He's big on education with Kwankwaso. Their records are very glaring, what they were able to do as governors, and it cannot be less better. Of course, working with other governors, because they've been governors, they have the experience. So they'll be able to use what they used in their state that worked, get other governors who are also great partners, to getting the country to work. So 4 years for a performer is a lot of time, but 20 years for a non-performer is not enough. And we could see that with development in some states. I can speak of Abia State, who some people in Abia feel that the 3 years of Governor Laz Ude Eze, he has done better than the past 3 governors put together. It's debatable, but that's the feeling on ground. And if people could feel that way and they are ready to fight anyone that wants the man out, and even telling him, please, when you finish, hand over to your wife, let it stay within the 5, even though that's not allowed by the Constitution. But that's to tell you how his administration, in just a short time, has been able to show what is possible within a tenure. So when Obi, I wouldn't say if, because I'm very confident he'll be our next president. When Obi becomes president, he's a hands-on person. You see anywhere things are happening, you see him around there, listening to the people, getting information, working with the entire team, to make sure that this country works. He will not be able to solve all the problems. Nobody will solve all the problems, but he will move the needle positively. He will push it to a way that lives will be better, companies will gain confidence in this country, local investments will improve, foreign direct investments improve. Some Nigerians in diaspora who have monies, who are looking to invest, who have the trust and confidence to bring those monies, invest in this country, and also he will tackle security heads-on like he did in Anambra State, and also supporting the frontline security operatives to make sure that they defeat the enemies.
All right, let's wrap up now. Is INEC institutionally fixable? The election is coming up January, February next year. And do you think there are any coordinated plan to forestall possible rigging? And if that happens, if INEC sabotages the process, how should Nigerians respond?
That's a good question. INEC, unfortunately, is a public institution that decided to sabotage itself. I was part of the advocacy for the Electoral Act of 2022 with my brother Ario. May God bless his soul. He passed on and couldn't even live to see the 2023 election. He was one strong voice. We marched in front of National Assembly, to push for the passage of that 2022 Electoral Act that made provision, provided legal framework that recognized IREV, real-time transmission of results. And INEC, through its guidelines, also made progressive guidelines that got the confidence of the Nigerian people, and people thought and believed that perhaps for the first time in our recent history, we'll be able to have credible election. Nigerian youth mobilized, got their PVCs, did campaigns, used their resources to campaign aggressively, only for the same INEC to sabotage its own guidelines and went against it. That breach of trust, it will only take actions to restore that trust that Nigerians had prior to 2023. But the elections that are taking place, what we saw in Edo State, and a few other elections, had also not, even most recently the FCT elections, where people got on election day and couldn't find their names where they registered. Just that morning, they started hearing, they were looking across board. What stopped INEC if there was, change of locations for people? Maybe they created new polling units and moved people there. What stopped them from putting out public notice, put on a portal where people could even check or publish it ahead of the election? So the public confidence and approval rating for INEC is very low. But you ask, what will people do? People are more determined to take their destiny into their hands. People are more determined to ensure that they don't vote, and certain persons will do whatever they like with the votes. Nigerians are more determined to ensure that their vote counts. Some are very upset and even say they are not going to vote because of what happened the last time they voted, and they saw their votes being stolen right in front of their eyes. But a lot is going to change because there are people who are so much more determined that have come over that shock, and we say never again. Nigerians are going to vote in 2023, and Nigerians are going to stand their ground against, 2027, I beg your pardon. So the Nigerians are going to stand their ground to ensure that not even the security folks, not even INEC, not anybody that will refuse to make those votes count. And as His Excellency Peter Obi said, if they don't count the votes, we count them.
All right, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you.